So the first step is we need to bring in our 360 footage. So I'll go to File, Import, and I select my footage and just press Open. This will import it into my fresh project. I can then drag this to my timeline, and just to show you that this is basically at the moment standard 2D footage. You can sort of see how the lenticular lenses are in play. I'm just going to mute the audio layer because we won't be needing to hear the audio for the purposes of this video. So if I right click on my imported footage, I need to just check its properties, and this will open up a new window. And what I'm looking for is whether it has VR properties enabled. As you can see, there's nothing that says VR or any of the settings for such. So I need to just simply modify the footage. So I right click, modify and interpret the footage. This opens up yet again another window with the interpret footage open. At the very bottom of this window you'll notice there's a VR properties, and I want to conform this to entangular. And I want to make sure it's monoscopic and to the correct 360 by 180 degree perspective. I press OK to that. So now if I right click and check the properties again, I should now have these VR options within the property panel. And this all looks correct. If you import footage that's directly created on a 360 camera, sometimes these options will be for you. However, when I've imported this footage, I actually have lost the 360 options. Next thing I want to do is I want to make sure I've got the option to toggle on the VR video display mode. So I just simply click on the little Add Tools button in my window, and I want to drag and click this Toggle VR View Interruption. If I click it, you'll notice nothing is currently happening, and that's because my scene isn't set up for VR. So if I just delete the sequence that's been created, and then I right click on my footage again, but this time I want to go with New Sequence from Clip. This will create a new sequence, but with the VR properties now enabled. So if you see, if I scrub along, it's exactly the same, but if I now click on this Toggle VR Display option, this will now open up a VR view. So I can click and drag around my scene and play my video as if it was virtual reality footage. If I click on the little settings option here, I can go back to my VR video options and click on settings for VR video and make this window a little bit bigger. The maximum size we can have is 180, so I'm going to do 180 by 90 to keep the proportions correct. Then click OK. And I'm just going to resize this window so it's a bit easier to work with. Oh, there we go, drag that. And now, as you see, I've got a bit more of a 16 by 9 kind of aspect to work with, so I can play the video, pan around. This gives you a kind of emulation. If I had a VR display actually enabled, I would actually be able to view this in real time. However, I do not have one plugged in at the moment. So I'm just going to toggle that off for a second. Now it's basically works as if you use any footage, so we can modify this, so we can trim our footage down in Premiere using the little razor tool, or C. So I can just delete the beginning and end and clean this up a bit. And I can also apply any filters or effects or other layers onto this. So I'm actually going to have a go at doing that now. So I go to Graphics, New Layer. I'm just going to add a new image from my file. So I'm just going to quickly search my desktop for something I can use. I'm just going to use this Earth image. Because what I want to do is I want to try and make a kind of patch to cover up where the tripod was in the shot. So I'm just going to zoom this out so I can actually resize this with ease and drag these little handles like so. You'll notice I'm using a rectangular or square image. This is because the rectangle or square, once it's wrapped round inside of a sphere, will actually be a circle. So bear that in mind. So I'm just going to make sure I'm on the effects controls and just put this into position and turn off uniform scaling. So I'll be able to actually drag this out so it covers the bottom part of my screen. So I'm just going to play back. Again, you don't have to do this. This is just sort of to illustrate a kind of semi-point, I suppose. Looks about right there. So if I go back into my VR view, I can now drag around and you'll notice it's sort of covered up to where the tripod was. You could put a logo there, you could put anything you want there. Again, like I've sort of said before, you'd want to use a low profile tripod, something that doesn't stick out too far, because obviously the camera is having to be suspended by something, but the tripod, the camera itself can't pick up the tripod, just the legs of it, if it's in this sort of form. So you can see what it looks like there without the graphic covering it. This footage is far from perfect because you can sort of see I've got a stitch line which would not be ideal or great. So this is just a test piece of footage. I would recommend lining up your camera first more appropriately and making sure there's no stitch lines before recording, because it's very hard to fix in post. And likewise, I can also add a text layer. You might find it hard to actually move some of these layers whilst you're in the VR view, so we just might have to toggle back to the standard view, which again, we just go back to our little tool panels down here and click on the toggle VR option, and then we can move our text layers where we want. Bearing in mind this will be distorted due to the nature of how 360 footage / video content is produced. Think of it like the camera is in the middle of a sphere and your footage is being wrapped around the inside of that sphere. Likewise, this is a good technique if you want to draw users' attention throughout the footage. We can have things moving to the side just so you can attract and carry on the narrative across the perspective. So I'm just doing some basic tests here, nothing fancy, nothing overly marvellous. There we go, there's my text layer in there. So if I play it, you'll notice it stays there, but I could also have it animate, I could have it move. I'll show you how to do some more fancy stuff in After Effects. But for basic video editing, you can edit your basic VR footage within Premiere fairly easily. So if I want to export this, I'll just go to File, Export Media. This will open up the export window. I want to make sure that my source is changed to VR monoscopic match source stereo, because I'm not using sort of ambisonic tools. I'm just going to give this file a name. I want to make sure I export it in the highest resolution I can, keeping to the kind of perspective and frame size that 360 footage tends to be in. It tends to be a lot wider than typical 16:9 style footage or standard TV footage, for example. So now it's just exporting, and because I've set my properties for it to be a VR piece of footage, the metadata should be included in the export. So just wait for it to encode. There we go. And then once my footage is encoded and rendered, I should then be able to upload it onto any form of social media network that allows for 360 playback. So I could export it play it on Facebook, for example, or YouTube. And then once it's uploaded to YouTube, you'd be able to have the same controls that you would have with any piece of footage, in a sense. Now, I'll show you how to do some more advanced stuff in the next video, but this is just a very quick how to import and do some basic effects within Premiere if your 360 footage is either not encoded or not being detected. Thank you.